Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be making the sign that goes above the brothel door for this dollhouse build. I'm also going to be building the extraction fan as a battery holder casing as well. So I want to keep this video quite short. I had many hours of footage to go through, so I've tried to really chop it down as best that I could. So how I made this was I went on to the M1 design space for the laser cutter and I just started putting some shapes together. I was just using these rectangles which are 5" by I think about 1.5" or somewhere around there, and I just cut out some frames. For me to make the actual sign itself, I went onto Cricut Design Space and I cut out this decal on some matte vinyl. There's something definitely quite therapeutic about just sitting down, relaxing and just getting your weeding tool and just pulling out that vinyl. So Aphrodite is the Greek goddess of love. I thought that's quite a fitting name for a brothel. I just also got back from Greece myself a week ago, so maybe with that holiday coming up, maybe I had that on my mind also. But also on that, I also had some cool little pillars which I got in a eBay haul, which I didn't know they were actually going to arrive in that post, but I think I'm going to use those. I also got some pretty cool little things to go inside this while I was in Greece. So with this decal, I was just giving it a good burnish with a bone folder, and then I'm just using some transfer tape for me to be able to transfer this onto my sheet of plastic. When you're working with vinyl, it makes it a lot easier if you peel away the backing paper from the decal rather than pulling the decal away from the paper. For the actual coloured part of the sign itself, originally I was going to buy some of the coloured acetate or cellophane films that you can get on Amazon, but I thought instead of spending that money I used Cricut Design Space and I just sized down the size that I needed for this, and then I just picked the colours that I thought that I might use, and then I used the print then cut function in Cricut Design Space to get me some different colours. I did different colours because I wasn't entirely sure what colours I was going to use and so on, but that's one way that you could do something like this. And I just printed it onto this inkjet transparency film that was purchased on Amazon, so that's a really cool product to have. But what I did find on the first one that I made is that these are quite thin, so I had to layer up a couple of them just for me to get that deeper colour. But just a moment ago I was doing a bit of tidying up and I found this file folder which is quite a thick material. It is pink rather than red, but that's fine. I think pink works perfectly well for a brothel. So I'm actually going to use this material now instead of using these transparencies. Then for me to glue them together, I didn't want to use a wet glue, so I'm just using some double-sided tape. Ideally I would have had some 1/16" red liner tape, but I'd run out of that, so I use this slightly thicker tape, and which is thicker than the MDF piece, and so I just sliced it down in half just to give me that perfectly neat amount of adhesive, and so that I could avoid any seepage. So here I've already placed the decal onto my wooden frame. and then I just repeated it for the outside of the frame to frame the actual sign itself. There was a slight gap at the bottom from where I made the decal, just a little bit too small, so I just went in on the inside with some black paint as well, just to prevent the light from shining through. So for this part I've sped this up really quite fast because I'm basically just putting 4 sides of a box together. So to create this, what it is it's basically a battery holder, and for me to create this I went on to makerbox.com and I just scaled it down to a size that I thought air conditioning may be. I don't believe I've ever seen one of these in real life because we don't have these external air conditioning units in the UK, but I needed to come up with an idea for me to hide my 9-volt battery pack. Originally I was going to make this sign with a cell battery inside it, but it just wasn't giving off enough power, so then I connected a 9-volt, which really helped these lights shine out as best, well, far better than what they were. So here I am using Yoo-hoo glue and I'm sticking down some wire mesh. This is just a really fine wire mesh, and I'm just using it just to create that screen that hides the fan. And to create what would essentially be holding the front of the fan. For me to hide the wire between the battery box and the sign, I just used a very thin, or very thin in diameter, cocktail straw. Then here, this was a pretty nerve-wracking moment for me, so I just made a hole for me to feed those wires through. I was scared that I was going to damage the actual light itself, but it was fine in the end. Everything still works fine. We're good. So then I had to start soldering. Soldering's not too difficult. It was definitely fiddly. I was struggling to see on the colours that I needed to actually solder my wires to, and this is possibly the worst soldering I have ever done in my life. It was a very small area, extremely fiddly, but I got there in the end. And it still works. So somehow, I don't know how I did this, but here it glows up with the red lights and the blue light, so it gives me a pretty cool halo of red and blue. However, it did go back to red a little bit later on when I installed it. So for the extractor fan, I decided that I needed to create a few more details, so I just went back onto Xtools design space and I just created a few more rectangular shapes, and I cut some 3mm circles just to give it that little bit of extra detail. Then once the glue was dry, I just took it outside and I gave it a spray of black spray paint. I didn't want it to look like a brand new box, I wanted it to have a little bit of wear. So whilst the spray paint was tacky, I just used my finger just to rough up the edges a little bit, just to give a little bit of texture on the front of the box and for the actual box itself. I then went online and I found some electric shock signs. I didn't know where my decal paper was, so I just printed them out onto some sticker paper, which that also then meant that I didn't have to faff around with some glue, so that worked out quite nice. Small details like this, it really helps sell something. And because I used sticker paper, I did have a little bit of white edge, so I just used a grey alcohol marker just to cover that up just that little bit. So I wanted to give this unit just that little bit more of an aging effect, so I mixed up a rust effect paste using some burnt sienna, cheap acrylic paint and some cinnamon. I just applied it in the areas where I thought that rust might possibly gather and where I thought it might look good. So at this point I realised that I needed just that little bit more detail, and so I figured if there is a unit there is most likely going to be some sort of wildlife. So I went through my little stash of 3D printed models that I have that I think I might ever need, and I found these little pigeons which I thought would be absolutely perfect. So I just did a very quick paint job to create these little pigeons.
Okay, let's go.
So here is the final result. So I'm really happy with how this has turned out. I absolutely love these little cute pigeons. I think it really adds something. And obviously if there's going to be pigeons, then there is going to be some pigeon poop. So my still to come on the actual building itself. I still need to make some neon signs which are going to go on the outside of the building just here, but I think I'm going to leave the rest of the facade of the building for now, because I'm really excited for me to start going onto the interior of the building. I think what I might do next is I might go into the entrance of the brothel. I've got an idea of how I want that to look, so I think I might go there. But at the same time, I'm excited to start making the sex shop itself. Obviously, there's going to be quite a lot that I need to create to go in there, because it needs to be all of the products, and then I need to actually build the shop itself. I need to come up with a theme, all of those good things. But I don't know where I'm going to start. I still need to plan all of my rooms on the upstairs as well. I do have some ideas with that, but we'll see how that goes. But for now, yeah, I'm really happy with this. Absolutely. So I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to my channel. It will definitely help my channel grow, and that is something that I would like to see happen. So I just want to thank you for watching the video and taking the time out to do that. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. Bye.